to the latest Centre Court MBA Festival. My name is Matt Symonds. I'm a co-founder of Fortuna Admissions, and with my co-host John Byrne, the editor-in-chief of Poets and Quants, over the next 2 days, we'll be hosting panels, interviews. We even have a fireside chat with the Dean of Stanford. I'm not sure that they needed firesides. The weather is so good in California. And we hope that wherever you are joining us in the world, from Southeast Asia, from Mumbai, through Europe and the Americas, that the next 48 hours prove to be an incredibly helpful, a very insightful, and certainly a very motivational 2 days as you think about your own business school plans and where they take you. We've had a couple of slow years for MBA demand, but that seems to be bouncing back. I just predicted that we will see a much busier admissions cycle this year. And we're kicking off with careers. Of course, if you're going to make this investment in your MBA, the big question, where can that MBA take you in your career? And the answer is so many places. But to get more details, we have a wonderful international panel to get us started, 3 of the world's top business schools. And it's my pleasure to introduce Melissa Afonso. Melissa is the Associate Director of Career Services at the IESE Business School in Barcelona, Spain. She is joined by Anne Alaoui. Anne is the head of both the MBA and the Masters in Finance careers at the London Business School. And Sadie Cuthbert, who is the head of careers at Cambridge's Judge Business School. Welcome to all 3 of you. We're eager to jump in, getting the festival started, and of course this focus for the next 45 minutes on the tremendous career opportunities that graduates from IESE, LBS and Judge enjoy year after year. Melissa, perhaps we'll start with you from the perspective from Barcelona. Just let's start a little bit about the school. You know, I mentioned it's one of the top schools in the world, about its reputation, your mission. It's a very values-driven institution, and what IESE is known for.
Okay, so first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with this so international cohort. Just to let you know, I'm Brazilian, talking from Brazil, São Paulo. IESE is located in Barcelona, but we have some campuses in outside Barcelona, and one of them is in São Paulo. And IESE is well known as general management MBA. So we started as a partnership with Harvard Business School some years ago, and we bring to Europe this 100% case methodology. So we teach by cases. So we teach students how to solve problems. And our mission started many years ago from 54, and it was basic to have this positive and lasting impact in society, in companies, throughout our professional excellence and our also we call integrity and spirit of service, which is very, very high inside IESE. Also, we are very well known by having a very global mindset in global school, meaning we have more than 50 nationalities on campus, only in MBA, for example. We have 350 students, but more than 50 nationalities. So the students are able to develop this global mindset because they have to work on teams with many different cultures, and we learn a lot about ourselves when we see each other. We see through the other's eyes, so this is super important. And also we call this IESE is very well known by this people-centered vision, meaning we discuss cases, we learn by cases, so through real problems, but IESE teaches our students to always put people first on all business decisions. I think that this is one of the important mark that IESE has, and many of our alumni that when they left IESE, they keep this in mind many different years. So they know how to solve many different business cases, but also they know that the most important ever is to take consideration about the people first. I'm also alumni from IESE. I graduated in the MBA 2008, so I can guarantee that this is how it works. So I think that this is the most general image about IESE.
Well, certainly, Melissa, with your focus on careers, you're placing people first, and that IESE graduates, you talk about solving some of the world's biggest challenges. If they have those skill sets, there will always be demand. There aren't many schools, Anne, that among the top schools that tell you where they're from in the name. London Business School is certainly a case. I'm sure that it is part of the personality and the culture of LBS. So tell us a little bit about the school, and again, with Melissa, the sort of reputation and things that the school is really known for.
Certainly. Thank you, Matt, first of all, for having me on the panel. London Business School, it really is in the name for me. So it's all about the learning experience, but what brings the learning experience together is the London hub and the global perspective you get through being here. So just, a few numbers, the current cohort of about 500, there's 94% international students. So that's more than 60 nationalities represented. But for me, that's in a way to surface, because a bit like Melissa was saying, it's about coming together with different ideas, working closely in study groups. And as nice as diversity sounds and having a friend and a place to visit all over the world, it's really about learning how to work together. All different kinds of people who might look at things in a very different way. For me, that's what London brings. You look around, the staff at London represent that. It's built into our fabric. I think it's a tolerant city, very open city, very diverse city, and that reflects it really. But layered on top of that, I would say, is certainly the faculty and the way they approach research-driven insights and the academic rigor. When our Vice Dean introduced the new class of MBA 2025, he gave the first lecture about looking at in-depth, rigorous thinking versus, let's call it lazy thinking, which we can see everywhere. Everybody can pluck a few bits of data and interpret it. But if you bring that intellectual academic rigor to your analysis, that's really what defines the problems and leads to superior solutions. So for me, it's the diversity and global mindset coupled with the faculty research-driven insight. And thirdly, what rounds it all off for me is the student-led learning. Students here come here because they want to have an impact, and they have that impact right at London Business School. The way they run the student association has impact on the way we work. We work in partnership. There's really an openness to collaborating with the student. So this becomes kind of a place where they can practice as well some of those leadership skills, stepping up to the next level. Just to give you an example, some of our students manage 40 volunteers in the student association. Well, that's a great way to practice leadership skills. So yeah, I would just say really it's the faculty-driven insights, global perspective, and diversity of London built into the fabric of the course and the mindset, as well as the student-led learning.
And then stepping up for these leadership opportunities, you've placed emphasis, Anne, on the rigor of learning, and of course, Sadia, for the Judge Business School, as you are at the heart of a university over 800 years old. I'm sure that has a tremendous impact both on connections and the thinking of the school. Tell us more about Judge.
Well, all of the above, if I could say. But I'd like to also add that when we talk to our students, the kind of skills, and we talk about global mindset, but we also want a very entrepreneurial mindset over here. We have a class of about 230 students for the MBA. And I don't think it's going to grow phenomenally more than that. And what we want out of the students is to do good, have a global impact as well, learn. We do a lot of collaborative learning, a lot of collaborative teaching, of course, cases involved as well. But we do this very diverse experiential program as well, where we give students an opportunity to work with many companies over the 1-year MBA that we have. So it's quite people-led, very collaborative. We sit in the heart of Cambridge, which is, of course, as you know, a big university. So we can pick and cherry pick, and they can cherry pick the kinds of people they want to meet, and through collegiate system, where they're living, etc. There's a lot of experience and a lot of exposure that they get. We are international, and we are very inclusive and collaborative. Those are the things I would say, and very entrepreneurial. I won't take up much more time.
And perhaps, Sadia, the conversations, the more formal conversation you might have at 9 o'clock in the morning then replicated at 9 o'clock in the evening at dinner, and the person that you're sitting next to that can be from a completely different field.
Absolutely, and that's why, and I'm sure that exists across other universities as well, but within, in the evenings when students go back to the collegiate systems and they have to sit next to, in fact, there's a bit of an ethos here that you really need to be sitting next to somebody. You can't go and have your lunch sitting on your own. You need to sit next to somebody, and then you ask the question, where are you from, etc., and conversations begin to happen. And we believe that that actually leads to a lot of good collaborative learning and a lot of inspired new companies that come out. And I think Cambridge does have its fair share of entrepreneur and new companies coming out of it. So
the people that you're sitting next to, Melissa, now, of course, you described 350 talented individuals from all over the world, each with their own distinct background and story, and perhaps each with their own very unique MBA plans and where their career takes them next. So working with your graduates, is it then breaking down every individual story to understand their underlying motivations and characteristics?
Yes, it's of course. In IESE we have this pre-onboarding process to understand exactly the background, where they come from, and we divide them in groups, because we have 5 classes of 70, but we divide them inside each class at like 10 groups of 7, but we take care to put many, for example, many different nationalities, not 2 Brazilians in the same group, not 2 engineers or the same background, in order to have this sharing of ideas and sharing of culture and learning with each other. This is the most important part of the IESE. Actually, we learn during the IESE that actually we learn through people. We learn as Sadia mentioned, the collaborative aspect of Cambridge. And yes, we try to enhance this collaborative approach also during the teams, but also one of our sayings here in IESE is we value the difference. Let's value the difference. This is, I think, that facilitates to understand many small problems that we have on a daily basis, because although it's really good, it's really amazing to learn from different people from different culture, it's not easy. Actually, sometimes it's a little bit difficult. And so yes, it tries to help the students to embrace all this diversity and this new way of working in the same as possible as we can. I think that in the end of the day, it's a super interesting and it's a really growth way of learning, and this is a market for life from our students.
A market for life. I'll remember that. The theory with some of my colleagues at Fortuna, and we often talk about Thanksgiving, that big US holiday, and how families come together. Maybe your aunt and your uncle say, so, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your career? Or there's been parental pressure to follow a particular path. Now, you're head of careers for the MBA and Masters. I'm sure it's not Thanksgiving every day. Where do you start? Is it to open up a discussion about what the students are looking for, what they're passionate about, rather than you saying, we've looked at all of the 360-degree reviews and we think you should be doing this? How do you start that entire process?
Oh, that's such a fascinating question. And also coming into this panel today, I thought, what are some of the nuggets I really want to impart? And funnily enough, that idea of gratitude. I think by the time our students come here, they already have experience, right? They're not undergrads, they're not early career students. They already are professionals in their own right. They've had success in their lives. So often it's about starting to unpack that. What has made you successful in the past, and what did you enjoy about that experience? What worked for you already? What are the things you're doing well and you like doing them? So your motivated strength. But equally, something pushed you to move for an MBA. So let's find that trigger. Let's find that motivation. Was it something, the values that clashed where you worked before? Could it be that you're just looking for something more? Like, this can't be it in my professional development? or some students have a very specific path. So I think that's where for us the beauty of coaching comes in, because it is ultimately tailored to the individual. So really looking at where's your starting point with what you bring already, and then also what is that direction you might want to move into? Do we have a gap? And then let's have this huge playground of the 2 years of the MBA to see what can you explore in that gap.
I love that
Does that make
framed
sense?
it as gratitude, and you know, that sense of awareness, perhaps of you know, the opportunities they've had, and of course the opportunities that they now want to pursue.
Mm.
Well, Sadia, building on that, and the sense of purpose, it is a big decision to go back to business school. You know, the talent that you receive are already enjoying successful careers. So again, where do you like to start that discussion to be able to open up and explore?
So we're really at an interesting point at this moment. Actually, we're in week 3 of our new cohort. We're having these discussions, but also at the same time, yesterday I spent half a day speaking to prospective students who might be joining us next year. So there's a lot. We start really early, like all my colleagues here have said. We start at the pre-arrival stage. We start unpacking a lot of stories. We start asking them about their goals, values, and their ambitions, and their strengths. And then we start having these conversations with students quite early on as well. But what I enjoy, and we allow them to change their goals whenever they want. But what we enjoy most is to watch, and I think this would apply to my colleagues here as well, is seeing the transition that happens during the year. So, you know, when somebody comes in very, very determined, oh no, I have to apply for this, I'm going to go and become a consultant, I will be going into this, and they would go on about it. And then to see their whole transition, and at the end of the day, maybe they're starting a company with somebody else, etc. That is very, that's very powerful. And it's nothing that's been done by us, so to speak. All we've done is facilitated the contacts or developed the network, or we've allowed them, they've learned, as Melissa was saying, really from each other, and really learned from their colleagues, and their eyes are wide opened. So the discussions start quite early with all of us trying to speak to them, but really the change comes from within the students, and led by the exposure that they get. So that's, I think, really powerful. And that, I think, is one of the key reasons what I would tell people to carry on with the MBA and keep looking and coming back, or looking at doing an MBA, is that huge exposure that you get. You know, I'm going to say this, and I'm probably not popular with this, but when you're doing a specialized master's, you're doing a specialized master's with a set of people who are coming from the same background. With the MBA, it's very different, because we, you know, here we have people. Yesterday I met somebody who was a dancer in our class. We've got, you know, as all of you will, we've got such different backgrounds, so many different sectorial and industry backgrounds, and then of course you add the nationalities and the many other aspects to it.
Yeah, that level of creative and looking at diversity through so many different lenses. You talk about new dialogues that open up, but of course, Melissa, there will be all of those graduates of the class of 2023 coming out onto the job market. And I thought that perhaps with the three of you, we could just take a look at the current class of 23 and the sort of job market that they faced in whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Latin America, in the UK and beyond. So starting with IESE, what have you seen, both in terms of sectors, enduring demand? What opportunities have IESE graduates been following this year?
Okay, so I think that in 2023, it's a little bit different than 2022, because we have the pandemic years, which has changed the game a little bit those last 2 years. So I think that we are going back to the game again right now. I think this year and also last year. In IESE, we have, as I said, we have people from around the world, 2050, and a lot of people from Latin America, and a lot of people from Asia and Europe. So usually many of them want to go to Europe to stay in Europe. sometimes is easier, sometimes it's not, depending on the working visas and many other variables which is interfere on these decisions. So we have people that also come back to their own countries after the MBA, and we see that each country in the world is in different economic development. So we have many things interfering in this, but in general, to have an idea, we have like a 33% going to consulting. So when they finish IESE, they go to consulting in many different places, in Dubai or in Europe, and also in Latin America, in Mexico. Mexico DF are recruiting a lot of IESE students from the last 2 years. Also, we have 21% going to finance, which we have many people that came with the background in finance, so they usually go back to their countries, or they change banks, but they continuing their pursuit on finance. We have also a trending which is technology amongst the MBA students, and technology is too broad, but I mean, talking about fintechs or B2B or B2C or e-commerce, I think that they are growing a lot and they are eager to having MBA, so they come to school to recruit a lot. Then the rest, which is like around 30%, we call diversify industry. It's a name inside the essay, meaning that this is englobes healthcare, energy, consumer goods and retail, and others. Okay, so we are going, many people going to 11% going to healthcare, usually those leadership programs that attracts people, and then we have energy, consumer goods, and others inside this. So this is the general numbers of IESE, of the students in IESE. This is spread out around the world, but we have like 37% stay in Europe of the whole population, 20 go to Latin America, 20 only in Spain, and the rest around the world. This
all
is
over the world.
all over the world, yeah.
Yeah, and Melissa's reminded me of those classes of 2020, 2021 with the pandemic. You know, there was all learning to interview on Zoom, often for positions that might be in another country. There was suddenly this, you know, extraordinary sort of global mobility and opportunity. As you look at the class of 2023, both from London and a domestic perspective, but also those that are then pursuing careers further afield, what have you seen this year?
In terms of employment outcomes?
Yes.
In terms of engagement? Yeah. It's been a tough year. I think that's fair to say, not just in the UK, but also globally. We have a similar sector structure that Melissa just laid out. So I'm going to follow a similar trend. But I would say there's always a marketplace for talent across the different sectors, but it can take longer in this market for people to get what they want. And I think that's the other thing to remember with students who have experience and come from successful backgrounds already. They're not just looking for their first step, a job post-program. They're holding out for what's the right role. And sometimes in this market, that might mean just that little bit more effort, that little bit longer, essentially. So that's kind of a general theme, I would say, we're seeing. If I break it into the sectors, so consulting, we generally have about 35 to 40% of the class going into consulting. We don't expect that to be different. The final numbers aren't in yet for the 23s. But yes, it's definitely been tougher because there just haven't been the projects for the consulting firms in that flow. So I think globally we've seen that has led occasionally to some start dates being deferred and a sort of slowing down in what you might call overhiring in the pandemic years. Because in the pandemic years, there was suddenly all this demand for advisory projects. How do companies deal with the pandemic? And that created hiring demand. So we've seen kind of a bump up in that in the pandemic years. And we're now coming back to the pre-pandemic years. So that's obviously looking a little bit lower in comparison to recent years. Finance, I mean, the shift out of IB towards PE, both from the supply and the demand side, continues, I would say. Now with PE, they hire when there's deals to be made. They don't really hire to just build talent in any economy. So I think, again, that has been a slower one, but we're we're quite optimistic that that's going to turn a corner as soon as you have that uptick in deal flow. The other side, obviously, technology, we usually have 29% of the students going into technology. This has shifted a bit out of big tech, more towards startup and scale-ups in this recent year. So I think, again, in a more challenging market, you have to look for where is the opportunity. And maybe that requires a little bit of a shift, maybe some stepping stones in terms of what you might want to go for initially. And just keeping the long-term picture in mind. I think often when we talk about employment outcomes post-MBA, we look at that first step out. And actually, it's important to keep the much longer picture in mind. Where are people headed? What skills are they building that are going to benefit them 5 years out?
Right.
I hope that's given a flavor.
It does. But when you characterize a tough job market, I instantly think, well, you know, I'd rather be a graduate of one of your 3 schools with the guidance that your careers teams provide, these extraordinary alumni networks. We'll explore all of those details and how that plays out, not just for the graduating year, but in the years that follow. But Anne reminds me, Sadie, you have such a granular knowledge of different sectors. You know, broadly, we might talk about consulting and financial services, tech. But, you know, are you then seeing even within those different sectors a certain pickup from startups, as Anne was mentioning?
This is for me. Yes, we're sort of, I would agree with everything my colleagues have said in terms of the splits with it for our class as well. But we are beginning, I think people have also, there have been 2 things going on. One is, of course, the demand hasn't been there. People have just overhired in previous years. And also there was less movement. Nobody was actually leaving jobs because of the uncertainty. What I see, and I do live in LinkedIn a little bit, I do see some of our alumni making those shifts now. So I'm much more hopeful. And a lot of those are coming through in tech as well. So again, like Anne said, you know, the big, the FANGs or the very big tech companies probably ticking up again, but I think our students are again beginning to look at cybersecurity, health tech, looking at the other little elements. Legal tech is growing, and those, you know, the niche techs, I shouldn't call them niche because people will be offended, but yes, the other elements of tech are growing. Of course, climate is another one that is seeing a lot of focus as well, and that doesn't always lead to very I mean, I haven't seen a huge climate consulting uptake, but certainly in terms of climate tech, we've been seeing movement. But again, it has been a tougher year, and it continues to be a tougher year, but I'm hopeful. I think things are beginning to shift a little bit. Private equity, VC are still in finance, shift away from IB, so we're still seeing that element come through. And again, of course, the students are also interested in that side of investing. So yeah, I'm kind of hopeful. We still have a few months, so until January, I think, for us, to sort of see how we are 3 months out. I think we'll get there in terms of our numbers that we normally get. About 95% recruited by 3 months out. It's just that we need students to have a little bit more agility, be resilient, of course, and they're holding out. You're right, Anne. They're holding out for better offers, and they're holding out for the right offers for themselves. And I think that's probably the wise thing to do as well.
Right. Melissa, in bringing the case method and that Harvard pedigree, you also opted for a 2-year program that can be accelerated, but that presents the opportunity for an internship between year 1 and year 2. How does that play an important role? Perhaps, you know, to make that, we often talk about a triple jump of changing geography and sector and function, but, you know, maybe getting access to a new industry, both what you like about it, what you don't, and how that will then help students in their 2nd year with the orientation that they pursue.
Yeah, you touch in a very important point, because from the ones that want to change career, to do this internship in a new, and put a step in a new future career is super important. Even to them to know if they like it, what they thought that would be a good path for them. Also for the company to see if this would be a good employer, and eventually to give them a full-time job. So in IESE, we, as you said, we have our 19 months program. They can do in 15, but the ones that pursue the 19, they are mandatory to do this internship, which is part of academics. And we have like 8 or 10 weeks, which is a long period, actually to them to work in a company, or also to like provide a mini consultant for a company. You know, imagine that you have a company they have a project that they like to have someone to give a hand on this project. So they hire me as a student. The student will do this project, and you will present at the end the results. So the company will have metrics to evaluate that student when they finish their internship, and have this a clear vision if they want to give them a full-time job or not. So this is why this is super important. And in IESE, we have this like a three ways to do this. We help them. We have this structure internships, as we say, is that the companies that used to do this many years, they understand what is MBA it's about, different in graduate internships, etc. They come to recruit on campus, and the students just apply for the sectors that they want to see it. We also have the unstructured companies, meaning the companies that would like to provide a summer job, but they don't come to campus to recruit. So we teach them how to go after them and search and find their internship. And we also have this, what we call SEE, with summer entrepreneurship experience, meaning that if they want to develop their own company during the summer, they have to find a team, they have to present their ideas to the teacher board, then they can spend their summer like an incubator, developing their own company, and eventually to present to the investors in the end of the second year. So we provide them these three ways of doing internship, and usually 100% of our students get this internship, which is, as you said, is super important to understand. And for the ones that want to change career, we advise them not to escape on this summer internship, because we see many times people that came to a campus with a fixed idea of IB or consulting, and after the summer internship they said, oh, I was completely wrong, so let's change our gear and go to other path, which is very good also, because they always change their minds during the MBA. Then we can adjust this. So we incentivize them to think strategically about the summer job and help them, and eventually to get what they want during the summer.
I guess, Anne, that internships are one of the first outcomes of all of the work that you've been doing with the students in their first year. So as you reflect on that work, and then you see them coming back from the internship, or perhaps the incubator project that they've been working on, do you see a marked change in the student that then returns after the summer? And what is the difference?
I love how you asked that question, because I basically sometimes look at the students when they come back to campus after their summer. I think they look different. And I think it's because they've adapted in the first year from a professional life to being a student. So by the end of the first year, they're really well into their student identity. But that summer brings them back into their professional life. And also the second year, then, I would say, is much more self-directed. There's a lot more flexibility, but a lot more choice. So I think that just calls you to be much more intentional even. In the first year, you can sort of go with the program. In the second year, it's much more self-directed about where do I want to spend my time. And I'm also glad you said internship, because I really look at the multitude of experiences people build. And that for me is the value of a 2-year program. Somebody might come in with an idea of exploring different areas, different directions. And then throughout the 2 years, they can do a summer internship, do a project. Melissa, our version of what you call SEE is called IESE. So very similar, entrepreneurship summer school, a different idea there. But also we have many students doing term time internships, where on a student visa, you can work up to 20 hours per week. And that builds up some real experience and skills. It might not convert. It might not be set up to convert sometimes into a full-time offer, but that could be about your long-term skills building and developing that exit point later on in 3 years, 5 years out.
Sadie, as we reflect on that balance, you know, the student mindset and the learning, and then the practical application of everything that they're learning, whether that's through company projects. Again, are you always looking to make that connection between, obviously, the learning process and how they can then deploy that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, and what we've got, it has to be that learning process and the curiosity to learn and to transition. You need those steps in the middle. So what we've got is in March, April, we have a compulsory project called the Global Consulting Project, which just sits there beautifully. And students work during, well, the rest of Cambridge students are having a holiday for 4 or 5 weeks. Our students on the MBA work with companies, and these can be very big brands and otherwise as well, work for 4 weeks full time with these companies. They're not getting paid, but this is part of the academic program as well. And they learn. They have an element of choice in which companies they're working for. So that already gives them that experience, and they would have already completed another project before that in the first term. And this sort of gives them an experience of a sector that they might be considering but haven't got experience of. So for instance, if they've come from finance but they don't know anything about the third sector, they might want to have an experience of that and then decide whether they eventually want to stick within that sector. And then of course internships are quite critical as well for students. We also have the opportunity to do research papers, so students would be doing something on their own with faculty, and that we believe also allows them to have the ability to sort of sell themselves a little bit more. We are a 1-year MBA, which makes that whole time period quite intense. And we fit in quite a lot of companies and work. So yes, we never see them. And when they come out of the education, I never really get an opportunity except at graduation, and then they look very different.
Sadie had given the example, Melissa, of areas such as climate tech, climate finance. Now, you know, that we talked about some of the world's big challenges and solving those problems. So to what extent are you thinking about those first steps after the MBA? That's a natural instinct for the student to think about the first job. And to what extent saying, this is all stepping stones as part of a bigger picture and a bigger path for that second, third, fourth position that we're working towards, you know, for the rest of your career.
Yeah, you touch a very, very important point, because we keep saying to the students that the return on the MBA is not right after the MBA. So maybe the job after the MBA will be not the job of their life, for sure not. For this new generation that they change like 13 or 17 times jobs, certainly not. So we keep telling them then to think strategically about a career, not a job. So we help them to think and to understand about their career. Actually, we have a program we call Discovery, from the ones that are being admitted prior to they came to IESE, the ones that are in doubt what to do, because as Sadia mentioned in the beginning, they know sometimes because they have an experience like 4 or 5 years experience, so they know the market a little bit, but maybe when they decide to stop working to pursue MBAs because they want to change something. That could be the triple jumpers, sector, country, or function, or just to change one of them. So we help them to think about it. What we implicated those change, how feasible it is, right? Because it's not that feasible, because after COVID, after this road, many problems arise, and many companies that used to recruit do not recruit anymore. So we have to change a little bit. As you mentioned, we have a rising of trending jobs like energy or sustainability, and the students wants to migrate, right? So actually what we do is try to help them to think in long term, in medium long term, 5 to 10 years, and what a career means, and give them tools actually to rethink about their career, since they are in IESE or in doing MBA. They have this time off professional, because many of them never stop working. So we let them know, we tell them to take this advantage of to be there studying. We know that the workload is super high, but also to take time to use career services to develop this sense of career, what they want in the medium long term, and what the next job after the MBA will be a step towards what they want in terms of career, but maybe not ideally the job of their lives. For example, I want to change sector and to move to Europe from someone from Latin America. And I let them know, okay, let's first continue what you're doing before. If you're working in a bank, let's try to work in a bank in Europe first. Then after you put your feet here, then let's change the sector afterwards. So, you know, we are doing this many years, so we try to help them to easy to get what they're looking for, which is, as Sadia said, it's very tailored because each student wants different things in different moments in their life.
So step by step and heavily personalized. Anne, when I think about Centre Court in October 2022, last year, we talked about big data and analytics. We talked about the healthcare sector. I don't think any of us mentioned AI, or certainly we didn't mention ChatGPT. And here we are a year later, near hysteria, Goldman Sachs producing their reports about the impact of it. So how do you approach something like an emerging theme of AI and help students to think through its possible impact and the sort of skills that will then serve them in this ever-evolving world?
That's a really good question. I think on the whole, as career coaches, we've all moved away from very prescriptive career planning, because you can't plan 5 or 10 years ahead even, because as you say, what you discussed last year at the panel has already changed. So you can't plan for these things. So it's much more important, I think, to have your guiding direction, your values. You know what direction you're headed in, but you also know there are many different paths leading to it. And I think that's what keeps you adaptable. So it's not so much about, do I want to work in AI, but what kind of company, what kind of work environment do I really want to work in? What's their mission? And then how do they actually get to that? So I think that's one of the, sort of foundational principles that we probably all have as career coaches. But yeah, it's absolutely true. There will always be emerging topics, whether it was healthcare in the pandemic, now within consulting, the rise also of deep tech and AI specialist consultants rather than just the generalist consultants, climate tech, sustainability across different functions is becoming a theme. So I think we see some of those on the horizons, and our students can see about how they want to factor that into their careers. To what extent does it make, we all need the minimum level, but then to what extent do they want to make it a focus? I think that comes again back to your personal choice and values.
Right. And is there a word that you use to characterize, we talked about global mindset, the importance of people in this. Is it agility? Is it adaptability? What is a characteristic that will always then serve them well?
It's definitely agility. One of the things we've been talking about is also comfort with ambiguity. That's been a big theme. So, and it applies to career all the same, because it's so tempting to come in with all the hopes and dreams, to be very open-minded. And then what kicks in with the peer pressure that you also referred to is this need to be focused. Now I want to know, because if somebody asks me, what do you want to do after the MBA? It feels very uncomfortable to say, well, actually, I don't know. Or it might even feel a bit shameful to say, I'm lost after all this exploration. But that's part of the process. I think sometimes students are then pushed through that pressure to make a decision too soon. And I think that can be really limiting, because if you then already go down the how to get into that, you might be making choices to go for your summer internship. That's a big investment in an area where afterwards you have to paddle back because it actually wasn't what you came for the MBA in the first place. So I think that foundational work, sticking really true to what your intentions were for the program, I think that's really important in the face of all kinds of peer and market pressures and marketing that comes at the students from our companies that we partner with.
And Sadia, whether AI, deep tech, healthcare, all of these, biogen, it's Cambridge graduates that are perhaps helping to define the futures of those fields. So just a final word from you in terms of alumni and the important role that they play, sharing their industry expertise, but being this ongoing resource for all of the MBA students.
So yes, absolutely. We can't have a conversation around careers without talking about the alumni and how they work with all of us across our schools. We have an advantage, along with the other schools as well, that we have the Cambridge University alumni, and we're a very science university, so a very tech-based university. So we've got all these people, strategic place, who can come in and give sort of insights and share insights, and of course they'll be starting companies, etc. We have what is known as the Cambridge cluster around us everywhere. So there's a lot of frenzy towards feeding frenzy as well towards tech, etc. that happens. We can't do anything. We bring in the alumni all the time, and they are just like all other schools alumni, very, very helpful with their time, their mentoring, etc. And willing to offer time. And just one other thing I'd like to add, when you sort of talked about us not talking about AI last year, it's so true. We have these special interest groups. We all have SIGs, and students form these. Last year we didn't have one. This year we do. There was a time when we didn't have one around mobility. Now we do. You know, so it's always evolving, and always careers are just coming through. And I think sometimes our students, all MBA students and students are just sometimes just confused about what kind of careers they should be taking, what kind of steps. So working with alumni, getting that insight in is also very, very helpful.
Viewers of Centre Court over the years have observed how much I'm in love with these career panels. It's something that we introduced 5 years ago. And I feel that beyond all of your strategy professors and finance professors, organizational behavior, I really see you and your colleagues as the secret source of the MBA that pulls together so many of these threads of personal and professional development. So my apologies to my colleague Leanne, because we're running over slightly, but I did just want to ask each of you, as our viewers think about their next steps, connecting with alumni, students, they can follow masterclasses of professors. But briefly for Melissa, Anne and Sadia, how can they follow the careers element of your business schools? Through reports that you publish, through LinkedIn? Melissa, how do you encourage any future applicant to just get a better sense of the school and being able to get a sense of the extraordinary opportunities at IESE?
Okay, I think that this is our website, our employment reports are super important, because our schools, they have this employment report with all the numbers, with all the salary ranges, every important info are there. Also, and in the website of admissions, we do have this. Also, when you graduate in IESE as alumni, as Sadia said, it's super important to have this contact with our alumni network, to understand what they are, the change that they made. We keep tracking on them. We have like chapters around the road in order to give long life learning, some presentations or online presentations. We also have something called Mentor Cloud, which is all the alumni are there and are willing to mentor the students on campus or the alumni from many years. So someone that is very skilled in energy are available to talk with the people that wants to enter in that sector. You know, so we have these various ways to put them in contact in order to keep them growing. And also all the career management stuff are available from alumni. So imagine that you finish your MBA and in 5 years or 6 years you want to change career and you don't know where to start. So you can also come back and use the career management services from alumni specifically. So the idea is to keep all ex-students very close to the school from many different years, with many products that we can provide to them.
And similarly, Anne, a big LBS family, some of the touch points that you think our viewers might find useful to better connect with the school.
Yes, definitely do your desktop research, the employment report, like Melissa mentioned. I think that is a must. Dig into those numbers in there, do your analysis, do some comparisons. That's one. The second one, I think, absolutely do your outreach already, what we call coffee chats, those connections. Reach out on LinkedIn. When I first started here as a career coach 5 years ago, one of the recruiters I met said the LBS alumni are like a machine. So use that machine. The second year students, the first year students who are here, they will tell you from the horse's mouth what it's like, what to look out for. So I would say definitely connect with people who have been here, who are currently here. And then lastly, panels like this. So gratitude to you, Matt, for putting this on, hosting this, because I think it's so important for people making those informed decisions about what's right for them. So I think any events like this, I would just participate in to make my decision at this stage.
Well, as I blush, Sadia, I'm going to turn to you for the final word. Again, finding
Well, I'm
out
going
more.
to say thank you again, Matt, as well, for this panel. But I will also say, adding to what everybody else has said, that watch out also for those pathways that if you follow a business school, I'm sure if people are looking to join an MBA program, if they look at the geography, start following the school on LinkedIn or Instagram, etc., you'll start seeing the kind of pathways students do. And I think those are quite interesting to see the transition, to see the story emerge. And those, many people might say, oh, well, I didn't think that was possible. And, oh, I can do this as well. That person comes from a similar background to me and makes it much more realistic. The other thing I would encourage people to do if they're looking for business schools is actually, if possible, visit, get to know the personality of the business school as well. I mean, I think that is a big difference in how we all are. We're all we're doing pretty much the same thing. We're talking about the same touch points, but we all have very different personalities. And I think it's worth knowing what's your fit.
Well, equally as a panel, you've all brought your own personalities and provided some early touch points. Whether you're viewers, you're joining us live, or you're catching this on YouTube or another channel in the weeks and months to follow. I mean, these are 3 extraordinary business schools. The joy we also have of connecting with the alumni, everything that Anne, Melissa and Sadia have said. Well, coming up next, my co-host John Byrne will be inviting the alumni of the 3 schools to share their experience as part of a very busy day 1 of Centre Court. But it got off to a great start, and that really is thanks to the 3 of you. So Melissa, Anne and Sadia, thank you for being with us at Centre Court.